Good afternoon. How's Davos? Excellent, excellent. That's what I want to hear. So my name is Hoi Lam. I'm a Chromecast developer advocate working for Google. And I have been involved in both the public SDK launch as well as the European launch of Chromecast in terms of getting our launch partners ready for the consumer service. So here are some of my details. My Twitter handle is HCL21. So think hydrochloric acid, the most powerful acid in liquid form, which also happens to my initial. And the hashtag for this session is Gcast. So feel free to tweet, Google+, Facebook, and spread the message of CAS. So this afternoon, what are we going to talk about? First thing, we're going to go through the kind of product concept, what Chromecast is, what Google Cast does. And then secondly, we're going to go through some introduction of the Google Cast SDK in terms of how you can use it to code your own app, and we can go through all the steps. And the next thing that we will talk about is the user experience consideration. So things like how do you interact with the TV, the different kind of things that you need to think about. The next thing is, I guess, what you're here for, lessons learned, some of the main gotchas that we found when we were working with our partners or when people are starting their own development. And then last but not least, Q&A. So any questions, difficult ones. I've just had a burger, so this may be your best time to get kind of secret information from Google. So please prep your Q&A. So, overview, what is Google Cast all about? As the first step, this is what it's all about. This is the Chromecast device that is about that big, which plugs into the back of your TV and turn any HD TV into a smart TV. And we have done it with everyone in mind. So this is not just for the tech crowd. This is something that we believe you can honestly give to your mother, your grandmother, and they will be able to use it. So that's something that really kind of we consider when we design Chromecast. So here are the three principles that we think about. The first one is it needs to be easy to install. So plug into the back of the HDMI port. On the other end, you plug into the USB port. The USB is purely giving power to the Chromecast. It doesn't do any of the kind of data transmission. And if your TV doesn't come with a USB port in the package, there is actually an adapter. So you can plug into a separate socket if you want. The second thing is about how easy it is to use. If you think about the smart TV of today, you think about an on-screen keyboard, and you're trying to type a movie name using up, down, left, and right arrow key. That's not the way to do it. You all have phones, tablets, and you all know how to type using on-screen keyboards. So the concept of Chromecast is you find what you want to watch, and when you're ready, you say, hey, I want to watch this cat video. Then all you need to do is to tap one button, and it's sent over the TV. That's all we ask kind of the user to do. That's why I said, we want this product to be so easy to use that even your grandmother can use it. Last but not least, it is about multi-platform. So we built Chromecast with not just Google's platform in mind, Android and Chromebook. We also built it for iOS, Mac, and Windows. And this is super important for us in terms of getting everyone around the house using Chromecast. So I love my Android phone, my Nexus 5, but unfortunately, my wife loves her iPhone, and I can't pry her away from that. But with Chromecast, we can kind of both control the same screen at the same time using kind of different platforms. So that is something that we really want to get out there. In terms of what the USB stick support, as I said before, it supports HDMI. In fact, it supports an advanced version of HDMI. So if your TV actually supports what we call CEC, then you can cast something to the TV that is turned off, and the Chromecast will be able to turn your TV on when you send a video to be played on the device. The second thing is something that not a lot of people realize, but we actually support 5.1 surround sound. So again, if your TV support an HDMI input with 5.1 surround sound, and you have a stream that supports it, it actually plays it back in surround sound. So one of our partners, Netflix, actually have a lot of asset that is coded in that way. Last but not least, but when we talk about full HD, we really mean full HD. So it's 1080p, no cheating, no 720p. It is actually full HD. And if we switch over to the technology side, when you think about kind of everything that is in play here, there are really two major challenges when we design Chromecast. So the first one is to get a decent Wi-Fi antenna into the package, which for us took months in order to kind of put it into a really small package so that people can easily plug it in the back of the TV and essentially hide the Chromecast from view, because we don't want another box kind of right next to your PlayStation or your Xbox. We really want this to be super easy and actually very pleasing for the eye. The second problem that we face is heat. With this amount of processing power that is actually on the device, this amount of kind of processing decoding power, of course the chip actually generates a lot of heat. So internally at Google, we developed a new test for that. It's called the phase test. So what we do is we run the Chromecast for an extensive period of time, and then after that, we ask our product manager to put the Chromecast on his face. And if it doesn't burn, it passes the test. And actually, very quickly, we get to a stage where the Chromecast is actually within a very sensible heat envelope, and we actually get the product out the door very quickly. So the next time when you're up against kind of a challenge for heat, please consider the phase test.
How many managers did you need?
Sorry?
How many managers did you need?
We actually kept the original managers, and I can assure you that there is no burn mark on his face. So he's still looking very pretty. So that's the backstory of development of Chromecast. Next, so we launched 8 months ago in the US. The reception has been really overwhelming. And what we have done after the US is actually retool our entire production line to meet the demand for basically all the consumer out there that want it for Christmas, want it for birthday, want it for their home. And about a month ago, we have launched in 11 additional countries, 10 of which are within Europe. France is one of our major markets, and in fact, I work with 3 of the launch partners that are in France. They are Canal+, SFR, and also France TV. So before we begin, why do we call it Google Cast and not Chromecast SDK? So Google Cast is the technology that underpins Chromecast, and it is our ambition to have more than just Chromecast being a cast device. So what you will see in the months and years ahead is that more and more electronics will support the concept of Google Cast and the way that we interact with other devices. So stay tuned for more. So before we go into the introduction into the Google Cast SDK, how many of you actually used the preview SDK that we put out? So this is not the one we launched in January, but last year. Okay? So I see one hand, and I would like to say thank you very much, because we learned a great deal from our preview SDK partners, because they come back to us and say, hey, this part doesn't work, that part doesn't work, and it basically helped us to perfect the SDK to the next level, which is the public SDK that we launched back in January this year. So second show of hand, who used the public SDK? Okay, a handful of people. So actually, this session is, I guess, aimed at the right mix, because I will go through some of the kind of basics of how you code on Google Cast, and for the more kind of advanced developers. We also have the lessons learned. So I guess we do have a good mix in this forum. Great. So what's new in the public SDK? The first thing that we heard in terms of feedback is the developers want to be in control. So with the preview SDK, what you needed to do is to send us an email. If you're lucky, you'll get back an email from us in 24 hours, and we say, hey, this is your app ID, please use it. If you're unlucky, it can take a week or a month because it just kind of get lost in an inbox somewhere for an engineer. And with the new public SDK, what we have done is we have made the console self-service. So you don't actually need to run it by Google. You could just register, and you say, hey, I want to create one app today, another app tomorrow. You can just do it all by yourself. And in addition to that, you can publish. You don't need to kind of get Google's permission to publish. You can just push your app when you're ready in your own time. Second thing is security. So a lot of our partners are media content playback partners, and they're really concerned about user tokens being passed around between the sender and the receiver, and that being intercepted or in any way kind of being insecure on the Chromecast platform. So what we have done is that we have done two things. One is to secure the communication channel between the sender device, which are your phone, tablet, or laptop, and the Chromecast device, which is plugged into the back of your TV. So the communication channel is secure. And the second thing that we have done is that we have enforced HTTPS for the application that you're going to run on your Chromecast. So Chromecast, you can think of it as being a browser, and it supports HTML5. And what we did was, during development, you can do whatever you want. You can just do normal HTTP without any security. But we do ask you that before you publish, that you put it on HTTPS. So that's what we've done in terms of enhancing the security. The next thing that our partner really asked for is what we call adaptive streaming media. So you can think of kind of the MP4 as being a single bitrate stream, whereby you have a certain amount of bandwidth and you play the file. But unfortunately, our Wi-Fi are not perhaps as stable as we want it to be, and it does fluctuate. And what a lot of our partners wanted to do is to give us a manifest file and say, hey, I've got 4 different streams for 4 different bandwidths. Please select the sensible one to play back on Chromecast. And we have created a new media player library to do that. So it is extremely easy to just give Chromecast a URL with your manifest, and then we'll play it to the best possible quality we can. And of course, software always have bugs. So we've fixed a lot of things relating to code stability, but also refactoring some of our code. So in the previous SDK, we have not quite considered fully the impact of network interruption. So you can think of within your Wi-Fi environment, your phone may be disconnected from the Wi-Fi for a fraction of a second, or maybe 1 second. That's not unusual. And in the previous SDK, there is some background kind of recovery service, but if the interruption is more severe, like say 10 seconds, there is nothing that talks back to the application and for you to essentially intervene if there are any kind of those kind of issues. So we have made a lot of updates to make it much more resilient and to give you much more freedom in terms of correcting for any kind of interruption in terms of the connection. Unfortunately, a side effect of that is that it is not compatible with the preview release. So a lot of our partners that have used the preview release, we do ask them to move to the new public SDK. And in fact, the infrastructure for the preview release, I think might have actually been switched off or is in the process of being switched off. So we are kind of warning all our partners, if they have not moved yet, please do move over to the new SDK. So in terms of an overview of the architecture, so as I've said, on the one side, you have got what we call the sender devices, which are your phone, tablet, and laptops. And on the other, you got what we call the receiver app, which is the HTML application that runs on Chromecast. And it really is, essentially an HTML5 app. The only caveat here is that on your laptop, you may be able to run kind of additional extensions or plugins. With Chromecast, you really have to think about the HTML5 standards. So we support things like video elements, but unfortunately, we do not support add-ons for the Chromecast platform. In addition, to enhance the video playback functionality, again, as I've said before, we have created this new media player library, which runs on the Chromecast device itself. There are two things to note. One is this is totally optional. So, if you're not doing adaptive playback, then you don't need to import it, you don't need to care about it. And also, the second point is it is currently in beta, so we're still making changes to the package itself, which may result in kind of you needing to do some work to move it to a newer version. That said, one thing to note is if you look at all our launch partners within Europe, all 7 of them, ranging from the BBC to France TV to Maxdome in Germany, all of them are actually using the media player library. So if you are concerned about whether it's production ready, then I would say don't be too concerned, but you do need to plan for potentially some fixes, if we do release a new SDK. Last but not least, as I said, all communication between the sender and the receiver are now encrypted. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the different options that you have in terms of receiver. So these are the programs that run on the Chromecast device itself. And essentially, there are 3 options. So the first option is what we call default receiver. We essentially write the receiver for you. There is no registration required. There is, in fact, a static variable within our SDK that contains the application ID of this default receiver, so you don't even need to know the default receiver ID. And all you do is you just send us the media file that you want to play, and we'll play it on the screen. The second is what we call style receiver. So here you do require a registration because we want you to provide us with a CSS that we can overlay on top of the receiver. And on this slide, there are some of the elements that you can actually customize using those CSS. So a lot of the developers find that this actually satisfies a lot of their requirement for branding, etc. So that is another option if you don't want to kind of deep dive into the HTML and JavaScript code. Last but not least is what we call custom receiver. Essentially, this is to do whatever you want receiver. And again, it does require registration because we need to map the application ID to the particular URL that you're hosting. And in this instance, as I've said before, when you published the application, then this receiver will need to be on HTTPS. It needs to be secure so that we kind of don't have kind of weak points within the kind of Chromecast stack as such. So what really drives the decision to use one or the other in terms of these 3? The first one is UI design. So if you want branding, then there is essentially 2 options. One is the style receiver, where you provide us with the CSS. The second one is the custom receiver, in which case you can customize it in whichever way you like. So if you need branding, style, or custom receiver. The second consideration is around DRM. So both the default and style receiver will support DRM out of the box, but the way that you send over the license information is that you need to embed them within your manifest. So you send us one URL with the manifest, with the license server, and then we'll go ahead and get that license and play the video. If you need anything more than that, so for example, you want cookies or login, user authentication, etc., then you will need to go down to the custom receiver because we do find a lot of different configurations for supporting DRM in the wild. Some doing custom data, some doing cookies, some do it with calling other APIs. So all of that are supported using the custom receiver. And I'm not going to read through kind of all the supporting formats, but on the left you can see kind of all the common media formats that we support, from JPEG to MP4. And then on the right-hand side, you see the more advanced kind of streaming format that we support within the media player library. And as I say, although this is in beta, it's actually quite stable. So all our European launch partners use it in production. So please do give it a go. And if there is any issue, post something on Stack Overflow, and we'll come back to kind of as soon as. So the next thing that I want to talk about is how to connect to the Chromecast to begin all these interaction. So there is really 5 steps, and it's a very simple process. So the first thing is really initializing the SDK and scanning for the cast devices that is within your local network. The second thing is detect how the user have actually selected a cast device that they want to connect to. The third is to launch the receiver application on Chromecast/your TV. And the next is to establish a data channel between the sender and the receiver. And then lastly, we just send data between the two. So it's a very simple 5-step process. In fact, we have made it even easier if you're doing just media playback. So we have, in parallel, actually done a customized media channel. So common functions like play, pause, or seek to a certain location are all supported within the customized kind of media channel. So let's run through the initialization flow. So I'll start with Android. First of all, the easiest way to do this is to use the Media Router Action Provider button that is within the Media Router library. You'll find that within, I think, the add-on or the extra kind of directory within the Android standard SDK. So this is not cast specific, it's actually a wider kind of pattern within the Android platform. And in order to call it, you essentially dropped it into the menu.xml with this extra tag in terms of the action provider class, and we'll kind of do a lot of the rest for you. So next, in order to kind of show the cast button, we do ask developers to check on 2 things. One is whether there are actually cast devices on the network. So if there is no cast devices, then we don't want the users to be confused and say, hey, here's a cast button, but I can't cast anything. So we do want to check that. And the second thing that we want to check is whether the cast device actually support your application. So that's why we ask you to put in an application ID within the media route selector, which essentially filter down the cast devices that's on your network to just the one that support your application. Then lastly, we assign a listener to react to the user selection. So that's kind of all, should be fairly straightforward. And we have a similar flow with iOS. So we started with the scanning of devices. And then next, the SDK will actually come back to you whenever it detected a cast device is actually coming onto the network or drop out of the network. So we ask you to essentially put in code that detect those events. And when you have detected those events, then we ask you to essentially just access the number of access the count attribute, and if there is 1 or more cast devices, then you display the button. That's kind of all the code there is to initialize the iOS SDK. On Chrome is even more simple because the Chrome extension that supports tab mirroring actually handles a lot of the discovery. So all you need to do is just to initialize it within your web page, and then you can get access to the functionality of Chromecast from within a browser. I hope that the initialization flow kind of demonstrate the cross-platform nature of Google Cast. For the rest of this session, instead of boring you all with, hey, here's how you do it on this platform, this platform, this platform, I will just show you the Android code that's behind each of the flow. For the other platform, it's actually very, very similar. So you can kind of infer the different steps within the Android flow to iOS and to web. So the next thing that the user do normally is to select the Chromecast device that they want to connect to. And here, essentially after the user have selected which Chromecast they want to go in the listener or the callback, we have access to the routine flow, and we essentially create or get an instance of the cast device which corresponds to that routine flow. And this will then be used in the next step to launch the receiver on the TV. And here it is. So we put the selected device into the API option. And then next, we create a Google API client. And if you have used Google Play services at all, then you should be fairly familiar with this kind of pattern. And what we do is we ask for a connection callback. So when the connection is actually successful, then we proceed to the next step. And of course, the next step is to launch the HTML application on the Chromecast device itself. And for this step, you will need the application ID. So before we can communicate between the sender and the receiver, we need to establish a data channel. And to define one, you really need two things in the custom class. The first thing is namespace, and it could be anything you want as long as it begins with urn : x-cast : So that's the highlighted bit up there, and that's the only requirement that, that we have. And you can actually establish multiple data channels to deal with different kind of communication if you want to separate them all. And the second thing that we ask for, apart from namespace, is once we receive a message, what do we do with it? So here's the hook in the callback class in terms of, once a message is received, what do we do? And once the application is launched on the TV, then, i.e. the result callback has been successful, then you essentially attach that custom class that you have for data communication to the method set message receive callbacks. And from that point onward, your custom class will receive the message that they are sent from Chromecast, and your application is essentially live. One of the things that developers did find a little bit difficult at the beginning is there is a lot of callbacks, as you have seen, in this flow. Unfortunately, it is necessary because we are talking about asynchronous calling between different layers of the software and between different devices. So unfortunately, it is a necessary evil in terms of having all these asynchronous calls. That said, on the Android platform, we have on GitHub something we call the Cast Companion Library. So that library is something that we hope will hide a lot of these complexity from you. And all you need to do is to just tell us that you want to use Cast, essentially. And you're either using it for video or data or both, and we'll deal with the rest. So please do have a look at that if you don't want to deal with a lot of these asynchronous call. And even if you wanted the challenge of doing the asynchronous call, I would still recommend that you have a look at the Cast Companion Library because it might actually help you a lot if you just import it as a framework. Going forward, we'll keep on updating the Cast Companion Library as the SDK evolve. So please do subscribe to that. The very last point is around send message. Extremely simple. Once you have got the custom channel class, you just pass it in and say, hey, here's my message. and it just magically kind of works itself to the Chromecast, which you can then react to it using JavaScript on the cast device itself. For media channel, it is very, very similar. All we do there is to define some of the common actions like play, pause, seek, etc. So just to help you to get a head start on that. So next, who are kind of developers here? All of you? Okay. For the rest of you that didn't put up your hand, this is your section, so that implies that you're designers. Actually, that's my feeble attempt of a joke. As developers, you should also care about user experience. And what we want is essentially a class of CAS applications that works extremely well. And here we're going to talk about some of the user experience consideration when you're designing for CAS. If you look at our developer website, we have actually created a very, very extensive list of design checklists. And some people argue that it is really, really too extensive in the sense that it's too long. So we do try to prettify it with more pictures. So hopefully this current version is very readable and bearable, because the first version, I think, is 9,000 words and very little pictures, and people didn't quite like that. I wonder why. So we have updated the design checklist to make sure that it is very easy to go through. But the question is, why do you care? The first thing is really about good craftsmanship. And good craftsmanship creates great experiences. And in the design checklist, what we have done is we have considered a lot of the edge cases that we have way back when we designed Chromecast, and also augmented that and added kind of the experience that we have working with partners. A lot of our partners say, hey, you haven't considered this edge case, or you haven't considered that edge case. And what we have done is essentially consider all of that and all the best practices and distill that down to the design checklist. So even if you say, hey, I believe that Google hasn't done a good job in terms of designing for Chromecast, I would still really, really encourage you to have a look at the design checklist. And if you're ignoring one of the advice, at least you're doing it consciously rather than subconsciously, oh, I just missed that edge case. So I do ask you to check out the design checklist. The second point to consider is if you want your apps to be featured by Google, then fulfilling the design checklist is the minimum bar that you need to pass. This is no different to how we consider featuring Android apps in the same sense. If you don't care, again, you don't need to fulfill any of the design criteria. As I said, we do not review your code before we go live. And so, you can absolutely work in your own space and your own time. But we do ask that, if you could, please have a look at the design checklist. So instead of reading through the entire design checklist, which I could, I decided to highlight some of the main points around that I really want to tease out. So the first thing is really about giving user control. And I would like to quote Spider-Man, with great power, comes great responsibility. And the TV is one of the most visible electronic items within your home. And it tends to be the best and maybe the loudest speaker within your house. So when you're playing back kind of media items on the TV, it is really, really super annoying when the users say, get a call, and they can't pause the TV or they can't lower the volume. And when the user loses that control, they then go, oh, I don't want to touch that app because the last time it makes me look stupid when I was trying to answer a call. So really consider about, at every point, giving user control in terms of turning the app off or pausing it in some shape or form. And the second point is around consistency. So here we're not asking you to just code the one app that looks exactly the same as our sample app, but rather just consider all the parts where it touches on Chromecast or it touches on Google Cast, and consider making it consistent with how we want to kind of interact with it in the different applications. And what this do is it help you and help us at the same time, because the user would have used, say, the YouTube app, the Netflix app, and when they come to your app, they don't actually need to learn anything different. They can say, hey, I know that if I swipe down from the notification bar within Android, I can play and pause the video on the screen, or when I am trying to cast something, hey, here's a logo that I recognize. When I tap on it, then I can send things to the TV. And what we want to do is to really basically having the user not think about Chromecast or think about casting. When they want to send something to the TV, they just naturally do it, and they don't need to learn anything. So from your perspective, it will increase the user engagement because, again, they don't need to learn. It just comes naturally. And the third thing to consider is really the interaction model. So as I've said before, the previous model is typing on a big TV using up, down, left, right arrow keys. And with Chromecast, you don't need to do that. And one of the things that we really ask developers to do is please do not recreate the TV remote on your phone or on your tablet with those up, down, left, right arrow keys. There is a keyboard on those devices, so please do consider the interaction model of Chromecast and how you can best integrate it. And here I want to, again, give you kind of the inside story within the Chromecast team in terms of how we think about this. So before we launched Chromecast, we actually thought really long and hard about whether we should include a physical remote within the package. Because, hey, turning up or turning down the volume or switching on and off may be quite a nice functionality to have, in a physical remote, and you can kind of just lift it and press on one button and it'll be done. We decided against that because we wanted to really kind of, in some way, force you guys to think about the pop experience for Chromecast. Because as soon as we put out a physical remote, then you go, well, actually, I don't need to implement that volume control because I know that the user will have this physical remote. And then you start skipping kind of the different requirements for the app, and then you basically have a very mixed kind of user experiences between the different applications. So it's just not just that we're cheap, that's why we didn't include a remote, but we actually thought long and hard about both the user experience and the developer experience in terms of making the easiest path, the right path for the developer to go through. So, last session before the Q&A, so please think about what secret you want to know about Google. I will normally say, sorry, I can't talk about that, but you can always try. So, lessons learned. As I've said, I've worked with all 7 launch partners within Europe, and what I've done is I've plugged out kind of 10 lessons that we've seen during those development, and hopefully it can save you time when you come to developing for Chromecast. The first thing is cause. Who know what cause is? Okay, a good proportion of you. So that's the CrossOrigin resource sharing. So it's a security mechanism that's in place to prevent you from loading kind of other JavaScripts that are not within your domain. And if you're using any kind of adaptive streaming, then you will need to enable this for your assets. So where you place your movie and where you place your license, you need to enable that. And every single partner that I work with come up against this. And the best thing to do is from day 1 of your project, and hopefully day minus 30 of your project, you actually talk to your CDN, your content delivery network, and get them to enable this as being the first thing to do in preparation of the project itself. Please note that we cannot turn this off, even within development. We've been told off by lawyers to talk about turning off any kind of security. Apparently, it is a offense in the US to turn off any kind of security mechanism, so we're not even allowed to talk about it internally about kind of switching this off. Next, if you're using iOS, then there is one setting that you need to make within Xcode. It's called the other linker flag, and you need to set it to the squiggle of C, and that will enable us to compile with the Google Cast SDK. So if you run into problems and you want more logs, these are the ways to switch on the more verbose logging within the Google Cast SDK, so you can see what is going on behind the scene within the SDK itself. Debugging the receiver, i.e. what's on the TV. So once you have whitelisted your Chromecast device, so for this, you actually do need to register with us, even if you are using a default or style receiver. But most likely, you're coding your own custom receiver, and there's a JavaScript part that you don't quite know, they work, they not work, etc. Then what you can do is to whitelist your own Chromecast device, and you can access essentially remote Chrome debugging at the port 9222. One thing to note is in the Chromecast setup app, so that is the app that you download onto your phone or your tablet or on the laptop to set up your Chromecast, there's a little checkbox that says send serial number to Google. For your development device, I would strongly encourage you to enable that, because if you don't, then we can't check the serial number against our list, and as a result, you will not get access to this particular debugging tool, the 9222. So by default, this is disabled for consumer device. You really need to enable it to use it. Who has implemented Lockscreen Control in Android? Good. So this will save you hours. So the Lockscreen Control in Android is controlled by a class called Remote Control Client. It is extremely fuzzy about the ordering of the different commands. So in order to use it, you really need to do a register media button event before the register remote control client. And it is actually stated within the reference doc, but of course, no one read the reference doc before they go programming. And if you don't do it in the right order, it won't work, and there's no error. So this actually cost me 2 hours of my life, and hopefully, it won't cost you any time after this. YouTube is great. Do not copy. And it is not because we think, oh my God, I need to protect YouTube. But actually, YouTube is using a much, much older version of the SDK. In fact, I would actually hesitate to call it an SDK. It was basically custom code in order to get the Chromecast launched. And as a result, it actually doesn't support a lot of the advanced functionality that we put in, and the best kind of UX guideline that, and the best practice that we have developed since then. So please do not copy what YouTube does, but actually go back to the design checklist and have a look at it. We have tons of partners telling us, hey, it works that way for YouTube. And then we go, actually, it's not the proper way. Please have a look at our checklist. So so please do not copy. We are spinning up an internal team to work with the YouTube team to move them, to help them move to the latest SDK. So hopefully, I can delete this slide sometime soon and say, hey, please do copy YouTube. I'm looking forward to that day. Timing. So 2 numbers that you need to know. The first one is 15 minutes. So when you go into the developer console and apply for a new app ID, we'll give you the app ID instantly. However, because we can't travel faster than light and because we are limited by physics, it actually does take us 15 minutes to replicate between all the data servers around the world for Google, so that the configuration is reflected globally. And from that point onwards, you can restart your Chromecast, and it will ping our server and get the latest configuration. And as a result, you'll get app IDs, whitelisting, enable after waiting for 15 minutes. So that's one thing to consider. The next number is 6 hours. So that's the time when you're finally ready to publish your app, it can take up to 6 hours for all the consumer device to get the configuration if they don't restart the device itself. So if you do have a press release to go out and say, hey, we have just launched this app, or you're doing partner events, etc., then please do publish your app at least 6 hours before that event, just so that when people receive the app, they actually get to use it. Next thing, network settings, number 8. So in a developer environment, Wi-Fi can be extremely challenging because a lot of you are sitting very closely together, a lot of devices, everything on Wi-Fi. So we recommend that you put all the Chromecast devices on a 2.4 gigahertz and everything else on a 5 gigahertz. And even better, if you've got hardwire, good old-fashioned Ethernet, please plug them in. And so we do a lot of that during Code Lab. In reality, in consumer kind of use, we don't find that to be a problem. It's only during development that, because of the density of devices, etc., that we do see problems with networks. Number 9, almost done, environments. So if you're coding your own receiver to run on Chromecast, we find that it's quite helpful to then set up different app IDs for a different environment. And as the app progresses through the development cycle, you then have independent test environments for everyone. And if you're playing media, we really recommend that you have different versions of at least one media asset available. And here are 2 things to mainly consider. One is geo-restriction. So if you're only restricted to France and you're trying to get someone to look at your bug, then we do need access from outside France. So that's one. The second one is around encryption. So have a clear, unencrypted stream and also a clear stream so that you can test whether it is an encryption problem as well. And that really helps when you run into problems. Last, number 10, but not least, is if you're working on Android, then we strongly recommend that you consider App Compact for your action bar. It will really save you time. So we're working with one of the partners in Germany. Essentially, I worked on debugging their code for about 2 weeks before launch. And I think we can shrink that down to maybe 1 or 2 days if they were using App Compact, because there was a lot of custom code that the particular partner need to kind of put into their code in order to make it work. So with that, happy casting, and Q&A starts now. Go for it. So the question here is whether it is possible to cast from a pure Java application from a laptop or a desktop. The answer is not yet. And my understanding is that actually that's not something that we have considered on our roadmap. So on the desktop and notebook, then we do ask you to consider using Chrome and a Chrome extension to push that forward. Go for it. Sorry, say that again?
Is it possible to cast from a pure HTML5 application without the Chrome extension?
Without the extension? Unfortunately, no, because there is, we basically need to reach deep down into the networking stack in order to access some of the peer-to-peer functionality. So you can imagine if any HTML5 app can access that peer-to-peer functionality, it will be quite dangerous because you can essentially access your home network. So we actually did a lot of work in security terms to secure those peer-to-peer connection within your browser. So unfortunately, we do need the Chrome and the Chrome extension. We welcome other browsers if they wanted to integrate the Chromecast extension, then we'll be more than happy to work with them.
I have the same question for Node.js. Do you plan to have a SDK for Node.js official? And I have a use case for home automation. My house knows how to pause video, but she don't know how to use Android or iOS. So it would be very easy to use Node.js to send requests to Chromecast.
Sorry, can you clarify for me what do you mean by .js?
Node.js.
Node.js.
Node.js, yeah.
Okay, and what are the things that you're thinking about using?
For instance, someone ring on the door, and the house knows someone is ringing, so it pause video and ask the Chromecast to pause the video.
Okay.
And you don't have a phone in the hand, it's the house who control everything, or push dashboard for home automation on the TV or camera, and things like that.
So you're talking about local media playback. Essentially,
yeah.
you got something that you want to play from your device. So there is two ways that this can achieve. So we have seen developers that wanted to send, especially photos. Those are quite easy because it's limited in size, from their phone to the Chromecast that's on the TV. So we've seen that done. That's not an issue at all. If you want to do video playback, we also have a partner called Plex in the US, which essentially have a media server type application where you can access.
But you always have user interaction. The idea is you have a server who push data on the TV, and user did nothing.
In that case, we will still ask the user to start that application. So, to start running that particular application in some shape or form. After that, you can actually develop, say, playlist functionality so that it never ends, or automatically kind of pick out different video or songs from a playlist and continuously play it to whenever. So there is no time limit on the receiver side. And in fact, the sender device can actually go out of the room, and there is no sender device connected to the receiver. It can still continue to playback. So it's not a requirement to have connections between sender and receiver for the receiver to work.
Merci, je crois qu'il n'y a plus le temps est reparti. Donc
Okay.
merci.
Actually, one more thing. Before we go, there is one more thing. Yay! So which one of you have heard of Android Wear? Okay, good proportion. And for those of you that have not seen Android Wear, it's our wearable platform, and smartwatch being one of the key use cases of that. And what does this have to do with CAS? So when you think back to the best line of code that you have ever written, it is quite often this, 0. So if you don't need to write any code, then there is no mistake, there is no time, there's no testing. And the good news is Android will actually support Android notification. So all you need to do is to code your app using kind of the standard Android library. If you implement the notification functionality within Android, then you'll get the Android Wear integration for free. And for the first time, this is what it looks like on Android Wear. So when I run the BBC app from our partner, this is what it looks like on the Android Wear device. So for you, if you integrate that within notification, you will get this for free when Android Wear launch. So with that, this really, really is the end of the talk. Enjoy the rest of Davos. Thank you.